College Lib is left flustered after Charlie Kirk rips his pro-BLM rioting and looting argument to shreds. Guys, this is going to be a lot of fun. I know you're going to like it. Personally, I find it enraging when people will sit here and make excuses for violent, disgusting societal behavior that should not be tolerated in any kind of civilized nation. So I think you're going to like this. It's great to see Charlie Kirk roast the guy. I think you're going to like it too. And we're going to get right into it. But first, everybody, please do me a big favor and like our video, share it around. And if you are new, subscribe to the Resistant Mainstream YouTube channel so we can keep bringing you guys this great content. As always, everybody, I'm your host, Darian. Let's get into the show.
You're notoriously anti-Civil Rights Act.
Well, again, I explained that earlier. There's parts of it that were good.
Okay, I want to know what your idea for, like, not only black liberation, but, like, liberation for any type of minority that was protected through the Civil Rights Act, like, what your idea for that would be if it wasn't there.
Yeah, again, I said it earlier that the part of the Civil Rights Act that disallowed businesses from administering services based on race, that was a good part. The other parts that created this this ridiculously overreaching anti-racist bureaucracy was ridiculous, and now
Like,
is being...
like what parts?
Well, for example, the parts that give us the enforcement on the Voting Rights Act, which says that I'll give you an example. Merrick Garland recently said that states cannot have voter ID because it's a violation of the Civil Rights Act. So that's insane because the Civil Rights Act went as far to say not just disparate encounter, but disparate impact.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So
I get that.
So the impact goes too far for me. Now, for example, if you go to a Walgreens and someone says blacks shall not come in, that should obviously be illegal. But if it says that, hey, at Walgreens, black customers are stopped more for shoplifting than white customers, then they have come into stores, by the way, and big settlements have been paid because it's a violation of the Civil Rights Act, even though it turns out that the black shoplifters were like actually shoplifting more on average than white shoplifters. So disparate impact is very, very dangerous.
Okay.
And that's...
So I actually agree with Charlie's point about how the Civil Rights Act is constantly used and abused. And frankly, I don't even know if I think it's even a little bit good, despite what Charlie's saying here. Ron Paul, really great guy as far as I'm concerned, called out the problems with the Civil Rights Act a long time ago, like over 10 years ago. And you got to put this into context here. This is at a time when conservatives were far more afraid than they are today to talk about racial issues, criticize black culture, things of that nature. So Ron Paul was very ahead of his time. And at the time, Ron Paul very clearly explained that the reason why we shouldn't have the Civil Rights Act is because it essentially violates private property rights, even abolishes it in certain respects. And he was very ahead of his time for that. But guess what? He was smeared. He was called a racist, a white supremacist, all that usual BS that we always hear. And that was because they don't have any actually good arguments for what they believe. They just smear you because that's the only tactic they've got. Also, I got to make a point about how propagandistic that name is, Civil Rights Act. It's just built into the name. Think about it. Someone says, you're against the Civil Rights Act? You don't believe in civil rights? You don't believe everyone should have civil rights? Not even black people? You racist, you horrible person, what is wrong with you? Very clever propaganda by those who pushed it, I do have to say.
That's where the Civil Rights Act allowed us to go.
Okay, I get that. But I also have another question about, like, student protests regarding any... you've been notoriously against, like, you know, like the Black Lives Matter protests, the Palestinian encampment that was here last year.
One a little less, but yeah.
Yeah. But then, like, if I'm not mistaken, you're pretty pro, like anti-COVID, like anti-restriction for COVID protesters. Like, protests, just to be clear, I'm pro, like, any sort of protest. Like, I'm pro
I think they all should have a right,
yes.
Of course.
But, like, when protest has been shown to, like, voice the opinion of the people and create change in a very, like, in a way that could be systemic in the future, why do you pick and choose certain protests and certain gatherings to, like, to go against?
To be clear, they all should be legal. I mean,
Yes.
Unless you're occupying a campus illegally,
Yeah.
which was happening, or you're harassing kids on the way to class, you don't have a right to do that.
But there was also some of that on the way around. But
I'm sorry, what?
and then just keep on going.
Or in BLM, you have a right to
Yeah.
march for that, but you don't have a right to loot stores, right?
Yeah, but then there's also, like, a lot of, like, black liberation movements, like used violence as a way.
Yes, I agree, and that was wrong.
Yeah, but then there wouldn't be.
There wouldn't be what?
There wouldn't be equal rights. Like there would.
Are there? Well, hold on a second. I'm against the Civil Rights Act in its current writing.
Yes,
So
I mean, but
so
like
I'm very consistent in that. So I don't think.
Yeah, but there's a good chance that there wouldn't be, like, an option for like businesses to discriminate against black people if there weren't protests that actually caused attention.
First of all, I think looting is wrong and destruction of property is wrong, period.
Yeah.
I don't care what you're doing it in the name of. It was wrong when they were smashing windows on January 6th. It's wrong when you're burning a Wendy's in the name of George Floyd.
Okay, yeah.
Secondly, what was exactly being protested with the BLM? Like the death of George Floyd?
I mean, no, it's just police brutality and defunding police. Well, not only defunding, but like allocating those resources to different areas.
It's so outrageous. There's not enough police and
Police brutality, huh? If you want to get a nice little red pill, look at the coroner's report, the first one after George Floyd lost his life, and what that said. Because hint, it's a little different from the court conviction and what story that tells. As far as the whole justifying violence thing goes, let's see this kid have the same energy for the riot that occurred at the Capitol on January 6th, which, by the way, was a lot less deadly and a lot less destructive than many of these riots from the Summer of Love in 2020 that we have to thank BLM for. And finally, a quick last point about the Civil Rights Act. A lot of people seem to equate it with getting rid of Jim Crow laws. It's not the case. They're two very different things. The Jim Crow laws arguably were totally illegal at their time and shouldn't have been passed. Obviously. But guess what? The Civil Rights Act was not a repeal of those Jim Crow laws, okay? Repealing the Jim Crow laws was one thing. Implementing new laws that permanently affect American society was a whole nother deal.
Black American neighborhoods.
I disagree. And I live in New York. There's police. There's police.
Crime is way up in New York, man.
I know, but it's not. But that's a testament to how police.
No. The head count has gone down.
There's like 4 policemen every corner.
Let me ask you: was the city safer under Giuliani or Bloomberg or under De Blasio or Adams?
It's.
What part of New York are you from?
I'm from like close to Harlem.
Okay, so you would know this intimately then.
Yes.
You know that it was safer under Bloomberg than it was under De Blasio.
Yeah, I'm not very pro De Blasio or Adams.
Okay,
yeah.
So but just to be clear, that you're asking me like what protests I pick and choose.
Yeah.
Like, I also will see what they're protesting. Again, they all have a right to protest. To be clear, but if you're protesting something stupid, I'm going to criticize you. Like, how about this? Instead of protesting against systemic racism, why don't you go protest to put dads back in the home?
I think that's a pretty stupid.
It's stupid to go put dads back in the home?
Yes.
Why? No, tell me. That's
because
so interesting.
That's not like I feel like to protest it has to be something more systemic.
This is interesting. So instead of actually improving your life, you should go protest and scream.
Dads back in the home is a pretty individual issue.
Exactly. That's what makes us different. So instead of going into the street and screaming about some sort of injustice, go improve your life.
Yeah, but that's not how you create change in a widespread audience.
Bingo. That's what makes conservatives different than leftists. Is that we think the true revolution should happen at home. The true revolution is you being a better citizen, getting loyally married to your spouse, having children, raising them well, going to church, having a job, being a good citizen, not going on the streets complaining about.
In other words, it's about personal responsibility, something that leftists very often don't understand and, in my opinion, willfully do not want to understand. Rather than taking responsibility for one's own actions, seeing what they can do to improve society and the world around them, starting at home, they'd rather sit around and blame some kind of undefinable boogeyman, like systemic racism. Police brutality, systemic racism. Everyone's just out to get the black people. Yeah. How about taking some accountability for our actions? Okay, let's just look at it. America is #1 in the world in single parenthood. And it's not just black people either. It's worse in the black community than anywhere else. Yeah, of course. You have about 3 out of 4 black children don't grow up with a father in the home. It's terrible. But still, it's a problem with white communities as well. About 1 in 4 white kids don't grow up with a father in their home. It's terrible. And like I said, America is #1 in single parenthood. Why don't we start there? But of course, the only response is, oh, well, that's stupid. Who cares about that? It's better to complain about some kind of issue that's never gonna get fixed anyways, right?
Well, I'm against that because I think, and I'm not against that, but I'm just, if whatever you decide to do with your life is like what you decide to do, but I think revolution comes through the gathering of people with like-minded views, and that can come most effectively through protest.
Sure, but I think be careful what revolution you try to invite.
Of course, yeah. Well, that's the point. People can choose if they want to or don't want to.
Yeah, I think that it's...
The business owners who get looted don't choose that. What about that? Stupid.
So interesting. Instead of trying to create this massive revolutionary change, use that energy to look yourself in the mirror and saying, I have a lot of problems, and I'm going to fix those before I try to fix society's problems.
But that only affects you.
Exactly, because that's what you can control. What we have turned into is a country that worries far more about other people's problems than their own problems.
Yeah, but what if there are a lot of societal issues? Like, what are we supposed to just not care about?
Well, of course you should care about them, but these are where has the emphasis been on stop doing certain behaviors that are obviously bad for you and therefore bad for society.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have a question in response to that kid's last question about, well, what about the societal issues? Who makes up a society? I'll give you a hint. It starts with an I. That's right, individuals. And those individuals and their individual choices affect others. So if we don't even have those good choices to start with, how do we expect the rest of it to work? With all that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. As always, please be sure to comment below. Let us know what you liked about the video, what kind of content you want to see in the future, and we'll see you guys again soon. Thanks for tuning in, and God bless.